Olga's show, the show where you can get inspired, motivated, and educated with phenomenal guests. Just like today, as you can see on the screen, I have this awesome man. Look at him, he's very also handsome, not just smart. He is the mindset guy. Mindset guy. What does it mean? Well, let me tell you more. Tony Broadbent is high performance coach and also inspirational speaker. Here we go. And as you can see, the theme for today is how your mind works, and that's exactly what we will find out from Tony, the mindset guy. Tonya, I am curious to hear your professional answer when it comes to how does our mind works.
It's a great question, Olga. Most people think that certain things have to be in place, so our life has to be a certain way. You know, we have to have the girl or the guy, you know, either relationship or maybe the business or the money in the bank or the jewelry or the car or the house or the stuff to feel happy, to feel complete. Now, most people spend their whole life, or an awful lot of their life, chasing that dream, chasing that reality. But understanding how the mind works takes all of that weight off and allows you to be present and allows you to be okay with things not being in place, not having to be in place to feel a certain way. I'm going to give a couple of examples if that's okay. I worked a long time ago, maybe I can't remember, 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago now, with a lady. I did a 2-day event. I live down in Dorset. I did a 2-day event. And this lady turned up along with, I can't remember, 14 or 15 other people that attended. And she introduced herself to the group and she said, I've had clinical depression. I was diagnosed, I think, 9 years ago. I have bipolar. She was on 3 different medications and she had this story. She had her identity completely wrapped around this clinical diagnosis of clinical depression and bipolar. And she'd got the medications and all the different things to go with it. And she was living that reality. And that was both disempowering, debilitating, but it was her truth right there and then. Now, we started this 2-day training. We spoke about different things around the mind, and we spoke about different things about human experience and the thought, feeling connection. And maybe, I think it was back end of day 1, but maybe certainly early day 2, she had an insight, she had a realization, she had a fresh thought that had her see something different. And it was the tiniest little chink in the armor that she'd been wearing about, you know, clinical depression and bipolar and how she identified herself and lived or leaned into the world. Just the tiniest little chink in the armor. But that was enough because by lunchtime and certainly early afternoon, she'd realized that she wasn't her diagnosis. She'd realized that, yes, you know, she had had moments where she hadn't felt great. She had had moments that some people would call bipolar. She had, you know, massive mood swings and whatever else. She left at the end. I think we finished about 4 o'clock or 4:30 on day 2. And she left and she said, I no longer identify, no longer introduce herself or recognize that she has bipolar and clinical depression. And we spoke, and I said to her, I don't know when this is going to happen. I said, I don't know if it's going to be next morning or if it's going to be a week or a month. I have no idea. I said, but the train has left. The you know, the letter is in the mail, so to speak, of her dropping this unhelpful, disempowering, debilitating story that she'd been holding for 8 or 9 years since she's been clinically diagnosed. And we spoke, I can't remember exactly, maybe 3, 4 weeks or to 5 weeks later. She'd reduced her medication. She was feeling completely different about herself, completely different about life. And we spoke again maybe 3 or 4 months later. She was down to something like, I think it was a third or a quarter. She dropped 2 of the medications. The last one was down to a third or a quarter of the strength that she was using. And she started a new business. She's now, I see her on Facebook and different places. She's now literally almost reinvented herself. She's doing 2 different businesses and she's in a whole different space.
Yeah.
So that now is just some old story that's just by the power of insight, from the insight and realization that she had about how the mind truly works, not how we think it works. Because most people, including you on this call, are going to say, Tony, look, I understand how the mind works. It's kind of obvious, you know, I'm 18 or I'm 23 or I'm 56 or I'm 79. It doesn't matter. Age isn't a prerequisite for misunderstanding how the mind works. All been, myself included, conditioned to greater and lesser degrees to think that things have to be a certain way. You know, we leave school. If we get good grades, we're happy. If we get bad grades, we're not happy. If we go to university, same rules apply. You know, if we get the top marks, we're happy. If we don't, if we go for a job interview, if we get the job, we're happy, and if we don't, we're not. We could look at many, many things. I mean, Olga's an amazing speaker, a phenomenal speaker. And Olga, I'm sure, would have seen many, many speakers that would go on stage and they'd be terrified. They'd be absolutely terrified. And maybe if there's 20 people or 2,000 people in the audience, they would say, they would attribute their fear, that anxiety and that stress level that they were feeling, which manifests in physical symptoms. You know, we get physiological symptoms. Our palms sweat, our heartbeat goes up, our mouth goes dry, our body tension changes. Wait for the best bit. Our brain chemistry changes. We're like a walking science experiment. We're phenomenal. We just sometimes forget. So someone's going to go on stage in front of 20 people, 200 people, or 2,000 people. They feel nervous. What about if they understood how the mind works and those nerves just dissipated all by themselves? Not from, and there's no disrespect here to tools or techniques, but it's not something that I use myself. But not from doing something, but from realizing, from insightfully realizing that we are the creators of our experience. It's a real simple, and this is not a strategy. This is just the way it works. You know, we think something, we feel something, we then behave or act in a certain way depending on our feeling state, and then we get a result. It's like, you know, it's so so ridiculously simple that can sometimes be its downfall. I'll give you another example. I worked with many sports professionals from a whole host of different areas, from Formula 3 to rally to football, tennis, golf, squash, poker. Now, most people say, Tony, poker. The guy plays high stakes poker. You know, £20,000, sits down and plays heads up with anyone in the world at £20,000 a game. And so, yeah, it's high stakes, and he's got a 2.5 hour morning ritual. I'm talking everything from, you know, his whole lifestyle was absolutely dedicated to being the best he could possibly be at 8:45. That he starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't play anymore, but when he was playing high stakes, his preparation was phenomenal. So sleep, recovery, hydration, nutrition, meditation. You know, everything, every single aspect you could think of, you know, his physical condition. He was like a highly tuned athlete. So when people say to me, yeah, tell me, you know, poker's not a sport, you tell him that it really, really is. He would put a lot of athletes to shame. But a story I'm going to share with you, or a case study I'm going to share with you, was a golf professional I worked with. He was an ex-Canadian tour player. And we worked together for maybe around 18 months or thereabouts. And when I first met, I got introduced to him. I seem to get recommended and referred, which is fantastic, especially because my online presence is not particularly great. So I do live on recommendations and referrals. So I got recommended to this guy, and I went along to meet him, and you know, we had a conversation. And he was telling me about his short game and his confidence and all the different elements of his game that weren't particularly as he would like them to be. And so he kind of wanted some tools and techniques. He wanted some strategies, and he actually said to me, Tony, you know, when I started talking about the mind, he said to me, I'm going to be honest with you. He said, you know, I've worked with, I think it was 5 or 6 different sports psychologists. He'd been a professional, and I say he's an ex-Canadian tour player, but he'd been a professional for, I think it was 20 or 22 years. And obviously fantastic at what he did, but he had some, again, debilitating, disempowering thinking that was not allowing him to play in the way that he knew he could play. So I started talking about the mind. He said, "Tell me, I understand the mind, but what about the advanced stuff? What about the good stuff? You know, what can you teach me that's going to help me play better?" And I said to him, "Look, would it be okay if we just had a conversation around the mind and just explored it a little bit? You know, the human experience." And he said, "Well, we can." He said, "But I know that already." He wanted the good stuff. He wanted the advanced stuff. Well, this is how the mind works. If I could give every single person on the planet, and certainly on this call, one gift for Christmas, it would be to have the tiniest little insight into understanding how the mind works and knowing that you are whole and complete and happy, and the potential for opportunities for seeing life differently and yourself differently, and your relationships and your work and business and all your aspirations are dramatically increased when you understand that. So if I could give anyone a gift, it would be that, just a slight little insight or even a massive insight. So I'm working with this guy. I say we worked together for 18 months. And on day one, he was adamant. He was clinging on for dear life. He was holding on to, Tony, look, you're wasting my time. Let's get on with it. Tell me the good stuff. He really, really wanted to drill into the good stuff. I stayed true to what I know to be the most powerful way that I can help anybody on the planet, irrelevant to what they're going through, from PTSD to clinical depression, performance anxiety, to businesses, sales teams, solving intractable problems in companies. And I'm not saying this to impress you, and I'm not saying it to say, aren't I clever? I just know that everybody, myself included, we're all absolutely phenomenally capable, and we all have the same capacity and capability to perform optimally in any situation at all, including high stakes situations, including when someone dies or divorce or a business goes bankrupt or we lose our job or we're going for a job interview or we're doing a best man's speech or we're doing anything. We all have the same capacity and capability to be absolutely phenomenal in any and all situations. And that is massively increased if we understand how the mind works. So the golf pro I was just telling you about, 18 months working together, we get about 2 or 3 weeks in, and he's resisting. He's clinging on to his existing belief system, the mental constructs that he's created. He's clinging onto them for dear life. He's had these for 22 years. He doesn't want to let go. But I was like a dog with a bone, and I was very gently, lovingly, may sound strange, but it's true, but I was very gently, lovingly, and respectfully, consistent in my attempts to soften the glue around his firmly held beliefs, that he could maybe just see something that would have him see himself and his game and his world differently. 3 or 4 weeks later, he had a moment, he had a realization. And that realization was that when he stood on the tee, because he used to have this as a lot of golf professionals do, I don't know who plays golf in here, but I've just started playing back after about a 25-year layoff, and I'm awful. And so I'll come back and my partner will say to me, how was it? How did you play? I said, I played awful. She said, no, not to worry. I said, no, it was fantastic. I loved it, honestly. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I'm not great. I'm not great yet. So going back to this golf pro, I say, we're 4, 5, 6 weeks in, and he realized that his pre-shot ritual, you've seen the golf pros on TV, they do the same things. They wear the lucky socks or whatever their version of that is. They have certain ideas about, again, what needs to be in place in the external world to raise the likelihood of them performing well. So his pre-shot ritual, he'd done it for all throughout the Canadian Tour stuff and for the last 22 years since leaving the Canadian Tour. And so I said to him, are you open to a little experiment? He said, yeah, absolutely. I said, what about you don't do your pre-shot ritual? Well, you think I'd just, done something horrendous. And, it was like, he looked as if saying, what? Anyway, so I said, what about if we just go with it? What about if we just play an experiment, just see what happens? You can always go back to your pre-shot ritual. You can always go back to your existing belief system. But just what about if just momentarily we suspend that truth that you know? What about if we just did that? He went, yeah, I'm game. Anyway, so we did. And he didn't do his pre-shot ritual, and I had him singing happy birthday and doing different silly things. And basically, I was just trying to take up some mental bandwidth that he couldn't slip back into his old way of thinking. And kind of even so he could visualize his pre-shot ritual, even though he wasn't physically doing it. So he's singing happy birthday, and he's counting backwards, and he's doing all these things, basically just taking up mental bandwidth. And we put 6 balls on the ground. And I don't know, again, who plays golf, but we're about maybe 100, 120 yards away from the hole. And that's used to be his favorite distance. And so I said to him, we hit 6 balls before, including his pre-shot ritual, and they were okay. Not for his standard, but for me, I'd be like, I've arrived, amazing. But for him, he wasn't happy with it. And so we put another 6 balls on the ground, and I had him singing and doing different things and basically taking up mental bandwidth. No pre-shot ritual, just get down, hit the balls, just 1, 2, or 6. The first 5 went on the green and went within we're about 120 yards away, went within about 8 or 10 feet of the flag, which is pretty good, even for a golfer from that distance. And then he realised he slipped into becoming consciously aware of what he'd just done. And he looked at me and I said, hit the last one. And he hit the last one and it sliced all over the place. It was awful. But it just really, really highlighted, and this was the moment that he had this insight and this realization. It really highlighted for him that when he took his thinking or allowed his thinking to dissipate, when he allowed his thinking to just fall away, not, oh, we're going to do something to make that happen, but he's just going to allow it to fall away all by itself. The zone and the flow state, which is what sports professionals, like the holy grail of sports professional the world, that just is present. That's what's there. So the thing that people, again, in the sports world are seeking is this, like, being in the zone and being in the flow state and, in the moment. Well, when he allowed his thinking to fall away, that's all there was left. Well, guess what? So anyway, so we worked together for an additional 14, 15, 16 months. And he then, he's playing the best golf he's ever played. And if he'd realized this earlier and And I said to him about, I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months into working together, I said, do you remember on day 1, and maybe for the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, when you were so resistant, when you were so wedded to your existing belief system and the mental constructs that you got in place and the story you had about this pre-shot ritual, it has to be in place, Tony, and all these different things. I understand how the mind works. I've worked with 5 or 6 different sports psychologists, and I challenge you. And he said, I do. I said, what do you make of that? He said, it's ridiculous, isn't it? So, again, so disempowering. He said, oh my God, everybody needs to know this. And I said, I completely agree. Mm-hmm. So that was him. So he's sorted, he's happy, and also here's the kicker, here's the ace in the pack, or the joker in the pack. His business, which was doing nicely, he's a teaching professional at a club up near London, and his business went through the roof because he'd let all this thinking drop away, and then suddenly he's showing up differently. He's being present, he's being understanding, he's listening to his clients. He's just showing up differently, so he's getting a different result. His limiting beliefs about what's possible for him, what's possible from a financial and business standpoint, his relationship went through the roof. It's like, everything, when we truly understand how the mind works and we really get an insight and really get a realization, that can change our world, and it seeps into every single area. The third, Olga, are we okay for time? Are we?
We are, yes. I'm just mind blown by your results and by what people achieve with you. I think everybody who's watching right now are feeling exactly the same way as I am. It's just like, wow, what a powerful story. So yes, please bring another example.
I'll give a third example, and this is from the world of business. Again, there's dozen, maybe even 100 plus now that I've worked with different companies from really one man band, one girl band, so small sole traders right through to big organizations. But the one that I want to share is I worked with them a few years ago, and it was a sales team. So I'd been, again, recommended, and I went into this into this company, and they hadn't hit target. They hadn't hit a sales target for almost 5 years, and that's quite challenging from a psychological standpoint. Being in sales and not hitting target, week in or week out, month in, month out, and 5 years consecutively not hitting target. That feels it doesn't feel great. And so I worked with them. I went in and we did some pre-work, like basically one-to-one introductions and assessment calls, I guess, to find out who's going to be in the room. I think there was about maybe 12 or 13, maybe 14 people, including the UK sales manager. So anyway, so we're in the room, and it's a 2 or 2.5 day training, and they hadn't hit target, bear in mind. They're all feeling demoralized. They're all feeling dejected. They're all feeling kind of discombobulated and disheartened. And we worked together for 2 or maybe 2.5 days. First half a day, people are sitting there thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? Because the stuff I talk about, I talk about consciousness. We talk about the human connection and thought feeling. It feels very soft and very a little bit woo and a little bit fluffy. But I speak to sports pros the same, and I speak to anyone I work with the same. Not on day one, and this may be too much for this conversation. We're only 20 minutes in, and I appreciate that. But we talk about, the spiritual nature of human experience. It's like these are not everyday conversations. So I'm in this company, and first half a day, the room's sitting there, the 12, 13 people sitting there thinking, looking at me as if to say, what the heck's this guy talking about? When are we going to get to the good stuff? A bit like the golf pro. This is a common theme, by the way, when I work with people. So anyway, so we get, I think just after lunch, we came back in, any questions? And a few people said, yeah, Tony, I get what you're saying about the thinking and the feeling and the mind stuff and the whatever else, but what about the sales strategies? What about the sales technique? And I said, look, what we're going to do, we're going to park all of that. And I'd said this right at the start, but I'd obviously forgotten. We're going to not talk about sales, even though that's what I was brought in to do, was increase sales revenue. And so we didn't talk about sales right until the second day. I think it was back end of the afternoon, maybe 3, 4 o'clock. And but there was one guy in particular, and he's sitting there with his arms folded and looking out the window and looking really, really bored and really disinterested. It wasn't there. It just wasn't there, or didn't seem to be present. And so in the evening, they were, which often happens, they were wining and dining. We just went out for a lovely meal. And on the way in, he stopped me on the way in. I think it was about 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the evening, and he stopped me on the way in. And he'd been resistant he was the worst culprit by far. He'd been so resistant all day long, as had a few people, but he was in a whole different league. And we walked into the restaurant, I was holding the door open for a few people to walk in the restaurant, and he walks in. He's one of the last people to walk in, and he put his arm on my arm. He said, Tony, can I say something? I said, yeah, of course you can. And I thought he was going to say, look, I'm not going to come tomorrow because I'm not enjoying it and it feels like a waste of my time and so on and so forth. But he said, I owe you an apology. I said, no, you really, really don't. What were you thinking? He said, well, we were staying in a hotel because it was off-site. And he said, I've just been speaking to my wife. He said, and she said, what's happened to you? And I said, what do you mean? He said, she said to me, what Fred, his name wasn't Fred, but Fred, what's happened to you? And she said, he said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're attentive and you're listening and you're asking about my day and all these different things. And anyway, so by the end of the phone conversation, she said to him, whatever the sales trainer, which I don't consider myself as, I'm a mindset guy, I'm a high performance coach, but whatever the sales trainer has done, can he do the same again tomorrow? Because I like this new husband. So anyway, so I said, I really appreciate that. So we went in and had a lovely meal, and that was the end of we finished the evening and whatever. We went in next morning. I always say to people next morning, any insights, any realizations, and so on and so forth. And so he was the first one. He was like new kid at school. He was so excited, and he was couldn't wait to share with the group. He didn't normally sleep well, and he slept like a baby. He'd had this lovely feat. I think him and his wife had spoke after the restaurant as well. And then they're like a whole different space. But anyway, but bearing in mind, I've been brought into this company to help the sales team start hitting some targets. So not hit targets for 5 years, and the following 12 months they were up £2.3 million. Which is substantial. It's like, so yes, we didn't talk about sales. I think we talked about sales maybe for an hour right at the end. I know, Olga, honestly. It's like, and this sounds so cheesy and so cliched, but it fills my heart with joy to think that these people, clients with me, and I'm sure you're the same, they often become friends because, we meet amazing people and they uncover something that has them see the world, themselves, their relationships, the possibility that's available in the world for all of us, see it differently. So of course it's like, they're lit up from the inside out. It's like life looks amazing. So they're walking down the road with a big smile on their face, and it doesn't mean to say they never have hardship. Somebody in their family dies or something happens. Of course they have a momentary blip. Me too. My nephew died a few years ago, 34 years of age. And it's like, I cried and I was sad. I went to the funeral. Of course, that's human nature. But the difference is that some people will have what most would consider a challenging or traumatic time, and they will take a dip and they'll stay down there for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 20 years. And then they'll go and seek help from the medical world. And I love the NHS, by the way, so I'm not knocking the NHS, but they'll go and seek help from the medical world. And they'll be diagnosed with something, and then they'll get the appropriate medication. And they're suddenly in this loop of, this is who I am, this is how I identify, this is the medication I'm on. It almost kind of validates and justifies why they can't get out of that situation. And so for me to be able to help them see that they can, and that they're so much more than they ever thought possible. And it's like, so just to finish off with it, with the company. So they were delighted, the company were delighted, because I say 2.3 million the following year, and it's continued to rise, and they've now got amazing relationships. They're all working less. This is the again, the joker in the pack for me. They're now finish when they're meant to finish. Doesn't mean they never ever send emails, but before they were working till 7:30, 8, 8:30, 9 at night, and I'm saying, no, it's not healthy, it's toxic. And the UK sales manager's going, don't say that. But it's true. And so just having them realize, and him as well, having them realize that if, happy, healthy, and in touch with themselves people perform amazingly well and get so much done in so much less time, when their mind's clear, there's less stress, and then they tend to get better results. It's like, who would have thought? Olga, how are we doing for time? Sorry, I'm going on. We
Let me just check. Well, we are good. We'll be really good to wrap up at some point, so we don't take advantage of people's time. But you know what, Tony? You shared so much value. I mean, if I would have to wrap it up, and if I have to really say and like refer to what you said, I'll probably be speaking for another half an hour because you said so much valuable stuff there. But maybe we can just wrap it up in a really powerful way and give away something that you really, think will help them now. Because I know that you shared so many powerful examples, Tony, and they are. Every single example is just mind blowing. But I do know that you have something that people can do and learn a little bit more about themselves. Can you tell us more about that?
I think you're referring to my quiz.
Yes, I am.
I created a quiz because what became apparent. Is it okay if I just give 30
Sure,
seconds just about myself, how I've arrived here? People, if I say this at the start, they're going, I'm not interested. Tell me the good stuff. Hopefully people have got a little bit of value so far and seen something that could relate to their lives, which is why I gave 3 different examples. But just really, really quickly, this is 30 seconds or 1 minute about how I come to do what I do. I'm 58, and when I was 15, I started getting into martial arts and absolutely obsessed with human potential. I got to 28, decided I was going to be a stuntman, so I spent 2 years training to be a stuntman, which was absolutely mind-blowingly exciting, from highboard diving, gymnastics, trampolining, martial arts, stunt driving, skydiving, and a whole host of other things as well. Had 6 different businesses. Some have done amazingly well, some have crashed and burnt, and some have cost me, tens and even over 100 grand. But the point I want to make is I got fascinated with human potential when I was about, like I say, 15, 16. When I got into stunt work with 28, 29, I realized the difference between, I was training with some phenomenal guys, like gymnastics. I trained with some guys that represent, not that I was certainly the worst in the group by far, but I trained with some guys that went to represent at the Olympics. And even at that level, which is obviously, it really is high performance, you would see in the big qualifiers and the big competitions, some people would get to a similar skill set, similar experience, similar from a biomechanical and physiological standpoint, but they get to the big qualifiers and some would absolutely fly and some would crash and burn. So that's when I got absolutely obsessed with mindset stuff. So since 28, which is 30 years ago, instead of just human potential full stop, which was what kicked off when I was mid-late teens, it was just like literally mindset. That everything is mindset. So that's what happened. I got approached. I got invited into a conversation with Jordan Berlfort. This was in 2019, the Wolf of Wall Street, which is quite an exciting proposition. And it was like, would I be interested in being their in-house mental performance specialist? It's like, my ego, I've just been honest, my ego loved it. It was like, oh my God, this is really exciting. I'm on the radar and whatever else. I actually walked away from the opportunity because they wanted me to do things in their way, and I wanted to do things my way, which is this stuff. And this stuff is, and no disrespect to me, done rather well, say the least. But this is, you know, this is me being true to what I know to be the most leveraged thing on the planet that can shift someone's world in one thought, literally one thought. So going back to your question, Olga, I've realised that well-being, both from a psychological and also physical standpoint, is absolutely critical to high performance. You know, if you look at any top flight sports professionals or top flight business people or just top flight people in general that are living their most full, complete, and sustainable life, and that last word is really, really key. They've all got kind of well-being front and center. So that's what I did. I created a quiz, I can't remember, 4, 6, 8 weeks ago maybe. It's a 2-minute quiz, and I think Olga hopefully will share the link to it. It's 18 questions. It's completely free. Takes you about 1.5, 2 minutes, and it's really, really simple. And it just highlights areas that you can potentially make the tiniest little, almost seeming insignificant changes that can have a massive impact. So things like, you know, sleep, for example, or hydration, or nutrition, or movement, or exercise, or mindset. There's just a whole area, and there's 5 different areas in total. But it can have you shift your mindset completely and shift your well-being into a place within a relatively short period of time. I'm talking like days, weeks, and months, into an area that maybe you wouldn't even recognize. Companies now are realizing the importance of well-being. They're realizing, lo and behold, and thank heavens, that you know, happy, healthy employees perform better. I mean, you know, who'd have thought? You know, it's like when I'm happy and healthy, I perform better. When I feel sorry for myself and I'm all doom and gloom and the world's hostile and business opportunities are terrible, and I tell myself all these stories, life doesn't look so good. But when I see it for what it is, it really, really does. So well-being is absolutely key. So yes, there's a quiz. You can also, I think there's an opportunity if people wish, and this is not a click and bait type thing. If people want, they can do the quiz and they can reach out to me and book a 15-minute call. It's not a sales call. It's just an opportunity to deep dive into the results, and to identify an area or a couple of areas where you could really, really quickly and really, really easily improve the quality of your well-being, improve your well-being from a psychological and physical standpoint. And then if people want to discuss working together, that's obviously an option too. But that's not the purpose of the call. I certainly won't be mentioning working together. That will come from you, not me. And yeah, I just love what I do. So if I can be helpful to anyone, if anyone thinks guy's barking mad, I haven't got a clue what he's just said, then fantastic. If anybody on the other hand thinks, I'm not quite sure what, but there's something there, you reach out. Honestly, I mean, nothing to lose, everything to gain. But and that's where they can get me, Olga. Thank you so much for putting that on the screen. You're such a consummate professional.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Well, it's just about making it easier for people to reach out to you. That's why the email is on the screen. But Tony, I mean, you and I, we spoke already, and we spent hours talking actually, and we definitely can. And you have so much value within you. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear so powerful examples of your clients. So I'm sure anybody who's watching us right now, please ask yourself this question: what does stop me? Like, what exactly is within me doesn't allow me to go forward? Go do that quiz. Reach out to Tony via this email, which is right now on the video, and also we'll type it below the video itself. So make sure you do reach out to Tony, because as you already heard, he's bringing absolutely incredible results to his clients. And as a mindset coach myself, I can tell that Tony definitely walks his talk. And Tony, I think you know what I mean, because very often we met so many coaches who very often are broke in their own mindset themselves, and yet they're coaching other people. But when I speak to you, when I hear you, everything you refer, everything you say, you speak in that uplifted, healed, and happy language, which means your mind is clean, which means your mind is healthy and connected. So the best person you can work with is definitely Tony, right? Because Tony already proved his truth. He already proved that with his clients. So Tony, thank you so much for coming today to share your wisdom with us. Thank you all who were watching us today. Really appreciate your time. And if you could share this video with at least one person, you definitely will share that person's life. Because what Tony was talking today about is absolutely life changing. So thank you for watching. But Tony, before we go, is there anything else you would like to add so we can bring more value to people?
I don't think so. I don't know how, there's one thing that's in the back of my mind, so I'll share it. I don't know how this looks yet, but I've got there's something, you know, when you have an idea, you know, when you have a little seed of an idea, but you don't know how it looks. It hasn't formed yet, it hasn't percolated, but it's there, it's in the background. And I want to and will, I'm on a mission to create a something. It might be a community, it might be a membership. I have no idea what it looks like, but I want to create a community of heart-centered, impact-driven people. And I'm not going to categorize and say male or female or young or old or this demographic, because I have no idea. But I'm just on an absolute mission to get this message out to the world, to make a difference. You know, I mean, I mentioned about, you know, our personal well-being from a physiological and psychological standpoint. But what about from a planetary standpoint? What about on a global scale? What about, you know, we could start impacting the well-being of the planet? You know, I don't want to take this conversation into a whole different area.
Oh, yeah.
but it's exciting to me. It's like, so I don't know what this looks like yet, but I am definitely, won't be this week, but it might be this month, and it might be next year, it might be the year after, I have no idea. But sometime in my near future, I'll be creating something that looks like, if people want to get involved in from a, whatever's important to them, it might be the oceans, it might be animals, it might be a whole host of things, but something, you know, it could be gender equality, it could be mental health, it could be, there's something. Are we okay for 2 minutes, Olga, or not?
Sure, that's why I'm asking you. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There's three things that I became aware of, I don't know, maybe this past year. The first one is called the Sustainable Development Goals. So the United Nations created this 15-year plan, and it's got 17 initiatives. And the initiatives are things like, you know, clean water, no poverty, gender equality, all these, education for everybody. So they're talking on a global scale. What can we do to eradicate unnecessary suffering and empower more people in the world? It's like that excites the hell out of me. That really lights me up. It's like I want to be involved in this. Don't know how it looks yet, and I don't need to know. I'm comfortable with that. And then the second thing was a company, or it might be an organization, a charitable organization called the 1% Pledge. And what they speak about is that everybody, including me, including you, and everybody in this call and beyond, can give 1%. And this is the whole idea, hence the title, the 1% Pledge. And the 1% Pledge talks about everyone can give 1% of their revenue, or 1% of their salary, or 1% of their time, or 1% of, maybe might be a product. So maybe, you know, sell 99 products, give one away for free. It's like, I love that type of thing. You know, I currently work with, this is my unsaid rule, but it's what I do. I currently work with two pro bono projects a year. It's like, and it feels good. It's like, so I love giving. And then the third thing is an organization called Buy One, Give One. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called Biggie. If you just put Google B1G1, you'll see it. And what they've done is they've realized that the reason that most people, certainly kind of, you know, smaller type companies, don't give on a consistent basis to some description of charity, well, two reasons. The first reason is, oh, it's too complicated. We can't really give enough money and whatever else. And the second reason is they don't think it'll get to the person that it needs to get to. In other words, the money will get gobbled up by, you know, red tape and politics and administration and all that kind of thing. So that's why they don't give. And also the amount that they can give, oh, it's not worth giving 300 quid or 900 quid or 2 grand. If we can't give 200,000, what's the point? So between those three things, there's a seed of an idea in here. Yeah. And I say it's not shaped, it's not formed, but it definitely will come to fruition, probably sometime this coming year. So that, if that interests, or if anyone's intrigued or excited about becoming part of that, I don't know what it looks like yet, so there's nothing for sale at all, ever. It's like, I've got no idea. But reach out and say, tell me, I would love to help, I would love to be involved, or I would love to something, if that excites you. If giving back and making a difference to people's worlds like I say, there's 17 different initiatives within the Sustainable Development Goals. I guess that a company could stand there and say, well, we're really interested in this. This aligns with who we are. You know, I mean, but yeah, so that's the only thing I'd like to add. It isn't really in addition to what we've been speaking about, but it's just my personal mission, and I'm excited about it, as you can probably tell.
I can definitely tell you're excited, but Tony, I would like to add something else. I think what you added there was truly powerful. Because if anybody was listening to you and they loved what you were saying and they could relate to what you were saying and they felt alignment and connection with you, then they can definitely get in touch with you. And right now, I know it is just a seed, it's just an idea. But if you do one step every day towards an idea, you will make
Absolutely.
365 steps by next year, the same date. And I can see that Trina, who's watching us on LinkedIn, she actually, she's saying that she's really intrigued by this. She says, Tonya, I'm up for that. What you are saying is so important. So I think actually Trina could be the one who actually could get in touch with you. So Trina, the email will be just below the video, and also you'll be able to copy that, and also we'll share it in a minute on the screen. So please make sure you get in touch with Tony, because I'm sure there will be some potential collaboration. And it is about throwing up in the air what I think about, what I plan, what I want, and allowing the universe to bring best people to you, to allow the universe to align the whole journey for you, because we should take care about what. And your what is to heal, to give back, to take care. And the how will be all aligned by the universe. So thank you for that additional add-on. I think that was really powerful, and I really hope people will get in touch with you, and I'm sure it will get somewhere. So thank you so much, Trina, for making that comment. Get in touch with Tony, and I'm sure we'll have great conversation. But also, here's the email for you to see of Tony's, where you can reach out to him and have a meaningful conversation. And I would definitely suggest that, because, and also don't align, just don't put 30 minutes, because you will definitely need more than that with Tony. That's for sure. That's for sure. But thank you so much, Tony. I so appreciate your valuable time, your expertise, your wisdom, and so much value you have given to us. Thank you so much for that.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate your openness and your time. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all who watched this today. Please don't forget to share this video with at least one person, because that will help us all to shift the energy in the world. And don't forget, next week, same time, same place, 1 p.m. UK time, Olga Show is back to inspire, motivate, and educate you. Take care all, and God bless you.